In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, God is one. Amen. Good morning, Anthony. Anthony, I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to see you today. I hope things go well for you for the next 6 weeks, I think it is, of lockdown, which will be very difficult and very painful for everybody in Wales. I'm very sorry about that. I'm still not well enough, really, to leave here. I'm not intending, really, to leave this little hut until tomorrow at the very earliest, and then we'll see what happens after that. Okay, good morning, Thecla. Hope things are well with you. Well, not good morning for you, but good evening for you. It's a grey, miserable-looking day out here. Thecla, I'm much better than I was, thank you. It's sort of a vertigo I get from time to time anyway, usually when I've been doing too much. And over last weekend, from the moment I arrived in Lincoln until the moment I left, I was cold, very cold most of the time, and didn't have a minute to myself to recover from anything. And by the evening, I was feeling really quite poorly. Right. Good morning, Natalia. God bless you. Thank you, Anthony. I'm feeling very much better than I did. The cuckoo clocks will have to wait. They're fine. They're just sitting there looking after themselves. They can cuckoo away to their heart's content at any old time they choose. But there we go. Thinking about cuckoo clocks reminds me of cockerels, which reminds me of Roger. I haven't seen Roger so far today. I expect he's still taking his beauty sleep because they tend to stay in bed quite a lot longer when it's a cold, miserable day. They sort of stick their heads out, have a quick breakfast, then go back to bed again, which is always rather funny. Anyway, I think I understand how they are. And also cockerels then brings us on to what's going to be happening today as well. Good morning to Judy and Vera. Good morning, Father Alexander. Happy feast days to you also, of Merwin and Ethelfleda, and also St. James, the glorious apostle. Good morning, Tatiana. Okay, well, we ought to be getting going, so getting going we shall. We'll be going to be looking at Mark chapter 14, verses 66 through to 72. And this is written, really, so that you take heart. So the worst you can do for the Lord is deny him in a crisis. And we see that this is exactly what St. Peter does. But is there a way back? Yes, there's always a way back. And even within this, we begin to see that there is a way back for Peter also. There's some word on Josie, who's the spider up there. I'm pretty sure, unless she's found herself a new hiding place, that poor old Josie got eaten yesterday. There are some blue tits going around all the windows and the eaves of this building yesterday, and they made a huge amount of noise, actually. And I think that amongst the other things they did was eat, alas, poor Josie, because although I can see her web there, it hasn't been repaired, and she was always very good about keeping her web repaired. Certain names and saints, a pronunciation challenge. You bet, you're quite right. I find it very, very tricky. Good morning, Phoebe. Alas, poor Josie. Good morning, Jovan. Thank you very much indeed for your prayers. I'm feeling far, far better today than I did yesterday. There's absolutely no way at all I could have got up. Just the whole place was swimming around me. I should really have stayed in Lincoln and not come here. By the time I arrived, I felt really poorly. Okay, we might have had a package arrive, Natalia, but it'll be down at the farm, which is quite away from here, and nobody has left this building, but somebody will go down there later on today and have a look. This sounds rather exciting idea. Thank you. Good morning, Stella. Oh, you're not cars today. Right, here we go. Chapter 14, verse 66 to the end of chapter 14. Now, as Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came. And when she saw Peter warming himself, She looked at him and said, "You also were with Jesus of Nazareth." But he denied it, saying, "I neither know nor understand what you are saying." And he went out on the porch, and a rooster crowed. And the servant girl saw him again, and began to say to those who stood by, "This is one of them." But he denied it again. A little later, those who stood by said to Peter again, "Surely you are one of them, for you are a Galilean, and your speech shows it." Then he began to curse and to swear, "I do not know this man of whom you speak." A second time the rooster crowed. Actually, it says in Greek, a rooster crowed, not the rooster. It says a rooster the first time and the second time. Then Peter called to mind the word that Jesus had said to him, "Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And when he thought about it, he wept. Now, this is a wonderful example of terrible translation, even though it's from the famous Orthodox Study Bible. There's so many bad translations in here, it's unbelievable. Never mind, we shall work through the whole lot and try and make it more clear about what it actually says. So meanwhile, the Lord is upstairs. The Lord is being tried. At the moment, the high priests are buffeting him and they're spitting on him, and the soldiers even are slapping him with their hands. They are anointing him, having recognized him as the Holy One to come. Okay, and this is horrific. Peter, meanwhile, is down below, and that is actually quite interesting. Oh, there goes a pheasant chasing past. Must have been frightened by something. I wonder what it was. They have every reason to be frightened. Another few days, the whole area down at the bottom of the valley here will be full of loud bangs as the poor old pheasants are sent down there and shot. They're beautiful birds. They're quite unnatural birds in this countryside, though. They actually come from China, I think. They're bred specially to be shot. You see them at this time of the year laying out their little areas. I think it's called a lek. And the males fighting with each other, making their territories, fighting with each other, and the females gathering around a healthy-looking male, without any understanding at all that in only a very few days from now, they should be heading off towards the game shops. Nothing whatever to do with this, but never mind. I feel sorry for them. A friend of mine who's a priest, remember, he came from Canada, still comes from Canada. In fact, he's in Canada now, Father Andrew Morby. Whenever he went past a field full of lambs, he blessed them on the grounds that he felt sorry for them, for they had such a short time to live. And I feel a bit the same when I see the cattle being born here, the field next to me here, full of calves. And I know they're there to be eaten. And I know that that's about the only thing you can grow up in these high areas, unless you're going to return it to the wilds, which is what I'm in favor of doing. But it is still, the poor little things, they're fond of their lives. You can see them licking their mothers and being licked by their mothers who love them. And before very long, they'll end up as corned beef down at the local corned beef factory. Anyway, there we go. Just the way of life. What was I saying before I was interrupted by these poor pheasants? Oh yeah, so the Lord is upstairs and Peter is downstairs. And that him being upstairs, I think puts into our minds other things that happen upstairs. Most particularly, 3 things, or 4 things. One of them, obviously, is the Last Supper. The second one is the trial of our Lord by the high priests. The third one is the Lord appearing to the apostles at the resurrection. And the fourth one is the coming of the Holy Spirit, also in an upper room. So those 4 things come into mind. And if you think about it carefully, you can see that all of them are linked together. That all of them, in fact, to do with Christ being God. Even the high priest recognizes, though he denies it, he accidentally recognizes the Lord as being the Son of the Blessed One, which means, of course, that he is God. So just keep that in your mind. But Peter is downstairs in the courtyard of the high priest's palace, and a slave girl turns up. That's what the word really means. It says here, a servant, a female servant, a girl servant of the high priest. But actually, it is the servant girl is actually the slave girl of the high priest turns up. And she tempts Peter. And here we're meant to have, according to the Holy Fathers, in our minds, one thing particularly, and that is Eve tempting Adam, finding Adam an easy way out. Instead of having to work hard to become like God, then he can simply eat this apple and be bound to both good and evil. And here we have the slave girl coming along to Peter and doing the same. For myself, I think that's quite a stretch. The church fathers quite often like to really squeeze every type and kind of meaning out of things. And they definitely were the sorts of people who find blood inside a stone if they squeeze hard enough. I think here we've got a bit of a stretch here. But there are other things they say as well. And one of them, which I think is very moving, is that Peter, who says that he'll stand up to the rulers and the priests, and he'll go to the death with the Lord, but he will not betray him, cannot stand up to a slave girl, somebody who has absolutely no importance. She's not just a slave, but she's a female slave. She has no value, hardly any value, not even her breeding potential value, which is a horrific thing to say or think about somebody, but that's how they thought about women and slaves in those days. And this poor girl comes along. She says, hang on, you were also with Jesus of Nazareth. I know you. And Peter denies it. Now, according to the Holy Fathers, again, this gossip and this maliciousness of this girl is to help St. Peter with his humility, and also to show us the mercy of God, that even in denial, Peter is shown mercy by God. So here we have the first denial, and it's very strong. He denies it, saying, I neither know nor understand what you are saying. Okay? Absolutely denies it. I don't know, and I don't understand what you are saying. That's exactly what the Greek does say. In some translations, you'll say, I have no idea what you're talking about. That's not exactly what Peter says. And his way of saying it is saying, absolutely, I don't know who you are talking about. Okay? It's a very strong denial. So he's frightened. And now frightened, he goes out onto the porch and the cockerel crows. It doesn't say the cockerel, it says a cockerel crows. Now, there is a little bit of a problem with this word here, cockerel, rooster. Elector or elector in Greek. And the reason why it's a problem is that the word elector was used for two types of cockerel, the sort like Roger is over there. And the second sort would be a trumpet that is taken up onto the battlements of Jerusalem and blown at different times during the day. And one of the times it's blown was at a time called cockcrow, which was about 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 a.m. It's actually called cockcrow. And at cockcrow, they blew this thing, and the trumpet was also called the cockerel, or the rooster, the elector. So we're in slight quandary here. I think we can solve it in a moment. Personally, I think it is actually a cockerel, a rooster. Do so for several reasons, but there is that slight problem. If it is the trumpet, it means that the Lord knew exactly what time Peter would betray him. exactly what time. So the first one, so at this time, 3 o'clock in the morning, Peter denies Christ. So there's a quite strong problem. Okay. The other one, though, is I think that it's better to think about the cockerel crowing, and that, from my experience of young Roger over there, also means that sometime very early in the morning and in the spring and the autumn, then it's not beyond the bounds of thought that at 3 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, then that cockerel would be crowing. He's certainly crowing by 3:30 o'clock in the morning, because I can hear him. And I can hear the one over in the valley as well, also crowing. So we've got a rough time for what time it is now, 3 a.m., early in the morning, cold. And St. Peter is now warming himself by the fire, or at least he was, but he's now frightened. So he withdraws to the porch, away from everybody, but he wants to notice what's going on. Okay? And then the slave girl turns up again. She's there a second time. She's a persistent little hussy, this one, and she comes along. I shouldn't call her that. We know nothing more about her. But I've got a very strong thing in my mind about what she's like. She's a bit of a troublemaker. She's having a bad life, and she can't see why nobody else can have a bad life as well. So she sees him again and began to say to those standing by, "This is one of them." And he denied it again. So this time just says he denied it. And then a little later, those who stand by say to Peter again. Now, it's quite interesting. In the other Gospels, it says the third denial, he's standing again by the fire warming himself. I think this gives us some idea about what really was happening, that Peter was showing that character of his that vacillated. He vacillated between the fire and the porch. He was cold. He came to the fire. He was frightened. He went to the porch. He got more courage. He went back to the fire to find out what was going on. And this was actually also going on in his mind. He was vacillating in his mind, going backwards and forwards about what he should do, how he really was. Okay, so going backwards and forwards. And then the people who are standing by that fire say to him again, "Surely you are one of them, for you are a Galilean, and your accent agrees with that." His speech shows it. Your accent agrees with that. Your accent is giving you away. So they think that they have him tied down now. Why would a Galilean peasant, fisherman, be in the priest's courtyard at 3 o'clock in the morning when Jesus, who's also Galilean, is being tried by them? Obviously, he's got something to do with him. It makes it quite clear. And then in verse 71, you get this terrible verse. Then he, that's Peter, began to curse and swear. And the word there, curse, is anathematized. He anathematized. It's a very strong calling down of curses upon yourself and upon others. I swear to God, blah, blah, blah. May I be blinded, may I go to hell, if this is that sort of thing. So he anathematized and he swore, "I promise you, I do not." And he then says, "I do not know this man of whom you speak." Okay? It could hardly be more strong. If you went up and spat on the Lord himself or trampled on an icon of the Lord, you probably know that clergy by the Nazis and by the communists, and also in Japan, clergy and laity were required to trample on rosaries or on crosses or on icons of the Lord or on the Lord's Prayer, or they had to trample on the Creed. And this is really what Peter is doing here. He's trampling upon the Lord. And it's interesting, the Lord said, Here, Peter he just denies that he is a disciple of him. And denying that he is a disciple of the Lord, in other words, that he's a Christian, is the same as denying that you know the Lord, denying Christ himself. Okay? So, pretty horrific thing going there. So Peter denies before the world that he even knew Christ, let alone was one of his disciples. And Peter, who proclaimed loudly that he was, that Christ was the Son of God, the Son of the Most High, who proclaimed loudly and said so many times that he would go and die with him, and certainly would not leave him, now brings anathemas upon his own head. He curses himself. And then is all lost? And I think that's a good question to ask at that point. Is all lost? Because everybody is capable of times of heroism, but also times of horrific cowardice, where in the face of torture and loss of status, of death, of being embarrassed in front of friends, we hide the fact that we are Christians. It's not just a question of, wearing a great big cross on your hat, or a big cross around your neck, although around in England now people don't really recognize that as a symbol of Christianity. And quite often, wearing a great big cross around my neck, I'm asked if I'm Jewish or Muslim, because they've forgotten about Christianity. But much more subtly, very much more subtly, do you live the Christian life the entire time? In the staff room of a school, do you disapprove of people swearing? It's interesting. When I worked in a school, when I was in the staff room, nobody swore. And when I worked in the prison, and I went into one or other of the officers' rooms, the officers who swore like the proverbial troopers did not swear at all. And if they did, and I was immediately behind them, they'd say, "Oh, it's you again, the stealth priest coming here just at the very moment." So we have to live our Christianity the entire time, and not giving thanks for the food, not blessing food, not praying, not making the sign of the cross over your lunch when you're in the office. These are subtle ways of denying Christ. You don't need to do it in a way that embarrasses others by singing at the top of your voice, but you do need to bless your food. You do need to remain Christian. You do need to take yourself off and say, at this point, like Muslims do, I say my prayers. And at midday, you go off and say your prayers. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you go off and say your prayers. And 9 o'clock in the morning, you go off and say your prayers. And you do so when you get up and when you go to bed. And these are just ordinary ways of showing ordinary people that you are steadfast in your Christianity. You're not showing off, you're just going off, and that's what you do. Other people go off and smoke. Let them go and smoke. Other people go and spend ages in the toilet. Let them go and spend ages in the toilet. You go off and you say the Lord's Prayer and maybe Psalm 50 or 51 in the other ones. Okay? So gently, and I mean gently, you maintain your rigorous devotion to Christ, despite the fact that everybody else in the office is saying, "Oh, that holy Joe." You leave it at that. They have little nicknames, so you look at your feet to see whether or not you're wearing Jesus boots. That is not important. But not denying Christ is important. But if you do, it is all lost. Verse 72. No. The rooster crows again. A rooster, rather, crows again. Maybe the same one. We don't know. It wasn't important to Mark, so it's not important to us. A second time, a rooster crowed. And then I'm going to read what it says in Greek rather than what it says in English, because in English it doesn't translate it at all well. In Greek it says, then he remembered. The word there is amnemnesis. He remembered, which Father Alexander and others will know is a specifically theological word. Then he remembered, and immediately, for the second time, the cockerel sounded, and Peter remembered the word that Jesus had said to him, before the cockerel crows twice, you will deny me thrice. And having broken down, he began to weep deeply. Okay? That's the way back. That's the way back. Then he remembers amnemnesis. Now, the Divine Liturgy is an amnemnesis of the Last Supper. It means it brings what was in the past into the present. Rather like the Jewish Passover meal, what happened in the past is brought into the present. So what happened by the Red Sea is brought into somebody's dining room. What happened in the upper room is brought into our churches and into our meeting halls during the Divine Liturgy. It's called amnemnesis. And here, Peter brings into the present what the Lord said to him. Okay? The distance between the Lord and Peter is not there anymore. The Lord is no longer upstairs and Peter no longer downstairs. And in fact, in one of the other Gospels, I think it's Luke, it says at this point, Jesus turned and looked at Peter. And you have that really important connection being made just there. There is a meeting of their eyes. More importantly, there's a meeting of their entire selves with each other. And at that point, there's an amnemnesis. The word, which means Jesus himself, the word, although it's not actually the same word, it's not or logos, rhema, that Jesus had said to him, the saying that Jesus had said to him, before the cockerel crows twice, you will deny me thrice. And here that connection between the Lord and Peter comes together. And Peter can see within there his own hopelessness without the Lord. With the Lord, he's brave to the point of being bumptious. Without the Lord, he's denied the Lord 3 times to servant girls and other slaves sitting around this fire, standing around this fire, doing nothing. And except gossiping and trying to make problems with this Galilean. You just see it as fun. And then you have this tremendously moving thing. In English it says, when he thought about it, he wept. That's not at all what it says in Greek. In Greek it says something actually quite tear-jerking. It's one of those parts of the scriptures I have to watch myself. It says, and having broken down. And it's a complete collapse that you have in Greek. It's the same as the word when they fall upon the ground. And having collapsed, having broken down completely, no further strength in him, none at all. Having broken down, he began to weep deeply. It says in English, he wept. But the Greek is a really strong word for weeping there. He wept, and no more strength in him. His pride is gone. His self-confidence has gone. His self-reliance has gone. His can-do spirit has gone. Even the strength in his muscles, and he would have been a very strong man, has gone. His strength of character has gone. His ability to do things has gone. He finds himself completely broken down, and weeping deeply. The lowest point of his humility and his humiliation. But actually, this is the point where, in truth, he becomes that rock, where Peter becomes the rock on which the church can be built, because the church can only be built on humility and in our understanding that we are nothing Nothing at all. I know someone who sat on a church step one day, wanting very much. It's an Orthodox church, wanting very much to go into this church. And there was sunlight on the steps, and the tiniest of ants crawled up the steps. The church was locked, of course. It was the middle of the day, so of course God had gone to bed. The church was locked, and the tiniest of ants crawled up these steps and went underneath the door. And the Lord said to him, "You have to become like this ant to enter into the church." Well, that person has never become like an ant, or so he says. But the story is a good one. And at this point, Peter, I think, would have swapped for the ant. He'd have seen the ant as somebody far more courageous and able to do things than he himself was. He was there on the floor, broken down, weeping, with the cockerel crowing around him. Okay? Seem to have frozen for a moment. Right. People asking, oh, there's one other nice thing about the cockerel. It's a British tradition. I don't know if they do it in other countries, but it's a British tradition to have on top of your church two things. At the far east end of the church, or alternatively, over the part where the sanctuary begins, you have a cross made out of wood or stone or concrete or metal, and it's immovable. It cannot move. No matter how much the wind blows, it will not move. At the west end of the church, and the highest place, you have a weather vane of a cockerel. And it's not just to show people which way the weather is coming from, which way the wind is blowing. And you know what? You can feel that on your face. But it's there, in opposite the cross. The cross stays where it is. But the weather vane, the cockerel, turns around all the time, blown this way and that way by the wind. And this is a way to saying to all the people living in the parish, be like the cross. Stand steadfast in front of everything that is thrown at you. The wind, the hail, the snow, the sun, the scorching sun, everything. Don't be like the cockerel, which bends in order to face the easiest way. Okay, that's what it's there for. Let's have a look. What people are saying to me. Lots of nice wishes for me. Thank you very much indeed. God bless you. Good morning, Mariana. Yes, I'm feeling very much better. Oh, Mariana, many happy returns to yesterday. God grant to you many years. And hopefully I shall see you before very long. It is very difficult indeed, Jovan, to disapprove of people blaspheming in the workplace. But Holy Joe, or it could be Holy Joe with no E on it, male or female Joe. Good morning, Margaret. I better crack on, otherwise we'll be getting to the end of our time here. I'm very much better, thank you. Lunchtime academic supervisions, the priest always get interesting. The clergy swear even more than others. Stasi family, yes indeed. I'll pray for them. Margaret O'Shea says, a broken and contrite heart. Yes, you notice I said to say Psalm 50. That is why. Yeah, thank God. Yes. A broken and contrite heart, more pleasing than self-righteousness. Fortunately for us, says Margaret. Quite right. What do you say about Fatima? I have no idea what you say about Fatima. I'll have to think more about Fatima. I don't know enough about it. Vera says, do you recognize him? I'm not sure that we do recognize him, Vera. I think that so many of us, including me, might well be prepared to deny Christ all over again. And I think that probably, I sometimes think the Lord might be too frightening for most of us. Wonderful, frightening. Korean, cockcrow or town criers. I talked about this earlier on. There's a possibility that cockcrow was actually a trumpet that blew at 3 a.m. in the morning. Father Alexander, yes, the Divine Liturgy. I think I said this. The remembrance of all things, past and future. Cross, the tomb, resurrection, ascension to heaven, sitting at the right hand, the second and glorious coming again. Oh, I see, of things past and future. Yes, and that way it's an anamnesis, a bringing into present of things that are remembranced. We don't remember something that happened. Remembrance is bringing it into the present. So Remembrance Day on the 11th of November is bringing into present of all those people who gave their lives or whose bodies horribly suffered during the First and Second World Wars and all other conflicts since. I'm glad that Thecla is not frozen where she is. Stella is pointing out that there is yes, you've got 3 rejections, 3 restorations. If you look carefully, you'll find 3 other things as well there. We'll come on to that later on. God's mercy for the sin of Peter prevails. Quite right. This is why it's so important to notice that Peter breaks down. It's his complete inability to continue. That's the really important part of all of this. Not so much his denial, but at this point he collapses. And that's how it is later when the Lord comes to him and says, "Oh, Peter, do you love me? Agapimo." And then, do you love me? Philemu. Do you like me? Philemu. Do you like me? Are you my friend? That's why it's so gentle. And the bringing back of Peter, you know at that point when he's weeping, you know that he loves him. You know that he has this deep feeling of betrayal within himself. But his betrayal is not like Judas's. Judas goes off, he doesn't repent. He doesn't weep. He's angry and he hangs himself. Here what happens is that Peter collapses. He's no longer able to do anything, not anything at all. Just weep in a huddle on the floor. Okay, so this is what's going on. Okay, right, God bless you. What are people saying? I shouldn't be pushing myself too much. I've already had a ticking off from at least one of the brethren here today. Stella says, when at Royal Mail, a small group of believers were granted a room for prayer and study at lunchtime. After I complained, the Muslims have been granted one. Blessed time. Yes. How is it that the Muslims are allowed to have a prayer room dedicated for them? And even if you go into a hospital or a railway station or into an airport, they often have a prayer room that is completely plain. And they tried to do this in the prison as well, where I worked. And I had to point out, look, a room that has nothing in it is not Christian. That's not the way Christians worship. A room with nothing in it is not Hindu. It's not the way the Hindus worship. A room with nothing in it is not Sikh. It is not a place where Sikhs worship. A room with nothing in it is somewhere where Muslims worship. And therefore, we need our space too, a space that is actually appropriate for Christian worship. And a place appropriate for Christian worship is not somewhere that is completely plain. They didn't understand this. Having said that, I know of a church in Lincoln where they actively chipped off all the crosses on the outside of it. How bizarre. There we go. Tatiana. Then you listen to the comment section. No, they're very talkative, Tatiana. Yes, the church is the rock, and the church has to be like Peter. Actually, it has to be a quivering wreck, something that knows that by itself it can do nothing at all. It's Christ that does. You know, I must get on actually. Yeah, Portsmouth, Tatiana, multi-faith chapel, just a room. Well, it isn't multi-faith then, is it? You need to go and say to them, this is not a multi-faith chapel. How dare you call it one? This is a Muslim mosque. I would like to have a Christian chapel, please. One for us. And it won't look like that. We cannot use it. It's not possible to be used. And you'll be surprised, actually, at the level of ignorance that people portray. They really do believe. And I had an imam working with me at one point who went on and on and on about the fact that if the room had nothing in it, then nobody is going to be upset by that. That's well, I'm upset. I'm deeply upset. That goes absolutely against my faith. It is a blasphemy, in fact, in Christianity to think in that way. Everybody is most taken aback because they had no idea. I'm not saying anything at all, incidentally, against Muslims by saying this. They have their faith. They have a complete right to exercise it in the right way. And I must say, I admire the fact that they are so pushy. So they should be. What I don't admire is the way that Christians allow themselves to be steamrolled over the incorrect idea that we must always give way. No, we don't always give way. The Lord was not crucified because he was so tolerant of other people. He just let things happen to him. It was an active participation in his own death. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Hopefully people can understand the odd thing. Andrew, I shall see what happens about this afternoon. I'm getting very tired at the moment. If I can, then I'll let you know. It'd be nice to be able to. But at the moment, I'm not making any promises even an hour from now. Okay? Hokey pokey. Bukra. Oh, Saturday. Saturday we don't meet. So God willing, we'll live stream on Monday, and I shall be here in the monastery on Monday because this weekend I'm not in Lincoln. Okay. All right. And we then have Jesus before Pilate. Good night to Thecla. Good night to all others that are in strange and wonderful places like the United States. And good something or other, good mid-morning to everybody else. Time to go and have your tea and biscuits. Time for me to have a good sneeze, I think. Excuse me. It's beautiful out there at the moment. It's pouring with rain. I can see coloured apples. The horses are looking most dejected. The trees down this side are the most gorgeous colours, wonderful colours. There's not a great deal of red in them, but there's every other shade of yellow and brown in them. Oh, I tell a lie, there's some red over there. Some of the trees are beginning to look naked now, particularly all the ash trees have all lost their leaves now, so beginning to have this fantastic skeleton. And you know the way it happens this time of the year, the sort of world sort of recedes away from you, doesn't it? It disappears off. Then in spring, it all comes back towards you. And it always makes you think of the trees actually getting up and walking towards you. It's very obvious. My parents had this lovely garden, and at the bottom they had an orchard. And in the wintertime, you can see right the way down to the bottom of the garden, from there into fields and so on and onwards. And then in the springtime, the apples would begin to bloom, and pears and cherries and other things. They had an orchard down there, and it was as if the trees picked themselves up and started to walk towards you, towards the house. It was more startling. As your view got less and less and less, they walked up towards you. Anyway, there we go. Righto, God bless you all. Be good. Don't be jealous of me. Thecla. Now, Thecla sent me the most beautiful picture yesterday. It'd be lovely to be able to share it with you all. I might just be able to. I might put it tomorrow or today, maybe as day before yesterday's image. Then you'll be able to share it and see it as well. Okay? Don't say, oh no, it was lovely and I really love it. It's called Having Tea with Father Philip and Josie and Roger. Unfortunately, Josie's got eaten in the meantime, but there we go. Okay, God bless you. Your prayers.